Okay, and we are live for episode 243 of Trek Live. How we doing?
Doing good. Battling a little bit of a sickness,
And we are live
but
for episode.
but what better medicine to talk about Star Trek? So I'm
Yeah,
excited for it.
it always does me good. Uh, yeah, so we are gonna do a little bit of an extended rewatch recap. I like to do these when either one of us kind of hits like the end of a show or kind of a landmark of some sort. And since the last time we've been here, I finished Deep Space Nine, so uh, we're going to cover where Dan is on his. I'm going to talk a little bit about Voyager season 6, which I think is like the first half of it is way underrated, and I'll kind of talk about why. Um, and then I have some things to show off from DS9 season 7. If you follow me on Twitter and you have a honed eye for these things, you have seen some of these things before, or all of these things really. It's the episode rankings. It's what episodes went up a lot, went down a lot from the last rewatch, which episodes didn't change at all, like literally have the exact same slot on the episode ranks from the last rewatch to this one. There's a handful that somehow managed to land in the exact same place. And we'll talk about that. And I also want to touch on the Discovery Season 5 trailer, since that's about a month away. And I think that's probably the last big drop we'll have to kind of get a taste of what it's going to be before it gets here in early April. So I think just to kind of maybe have it flow a little bit, if it's cool, I'll talk a little bit about Voyager Season 6, and then we'll talk about Discovery, where you are, and then we'll get into Deep Space Nine stuff. And we'll touch on Disco Season 5 maybe at the end, wrap up with just some quick thoughts on what we saw in the trailer. In true live format, we don't cover a lot of like game planning and mapping out until we literally sit down to do this. So
Yeah,
we like to
30
fly.
seconds before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we fly by the seat of our pants here on Track Live.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think that works as far as like kind of trading off who's talking, and like you said, you're battling an illness, so I might do some of the heavy lifting this week and give Dan a little bit of a break. Um, Voyager season 6, I think, does not get the love it deserves, particularly in the first half. For me, the first half of the season, I gave 6 A's, and I'm pretty stingy with A's. I don't give a ton out. I try really hard not to. I want to make sure that like the percentage of episodes in the whole grand scheme of things doesn't skew very heavy towards like a quarter or more of them getting that A grade, full A grade. So I try really hard to hold them back for episodes that really hit me or I think are really impactful. I mentioned before I have like a 4 quadrant system that I kind of look for when I do that. I'm looking for like, is it emotional? Does it have an emotional impact of some sort? Does it provide some meaningful insight or development or exploration for a character? Like, do we really feel like we're digging into somebody in a meaningful way? Does it have a big, or does it lean into an interesting, cool, innovative science fiction premise? And does it make some sort of impact on the greater Star Trek universe? Like, does it feel like it leaves a mark on what's to come? Does it add to the color of the whole thing? So I try to stick to that as much as I can. And there are seasons where I don't give any. There are a handful of them, and there are seasons where I only give maybe 1 or 2. And Voyager season 6, that first half, about half the episodes got an A. They are Equinox Part 2, which I'm a big. I think from previous conversations, I don't think you're as huge on Equinox as I am. We have Rob and Jeff in the chat. Hello to both of you. Yeah, Equinox Part 2, Barge of the Dead, which I think is a freaking classic that does
So
not
good.
get
Yeah.
the love it deserves. I think Tinker Tenor Dr. Spy is excellent, like a truly great Star Trek comedy. I think One Small Step is awesome as sort of maybe a little hint of what's to come with Enterprise. Showing off like early space exploration, tying into kind of bridging the gap between the NASA and space program that we know and maybe what's a little closer to the Star Trek universe. I think Pathfinder is a huge episode for Voyager as a whole. And I think I mentioned in my review that I think it's as meta as Star Trek gets. I think it's really about like being a fan of something and wanting to envelop yourself in something that you find comforting when you're having a hard time, when you feel isolated or having a, you know, a struggle in your personal life. Being able to lose yourself in a world that you find comforting is something that I think we all have experienced from time to time, but especially fans of Star Trek. And Blink of an Eye, I think, is a classic, big sci-fi, ambitious kind of episode. So I just think that there are like some of my favorite episodes of Voyager kind of all live in this short, compact period of time at the beginning of season 6. And I think they're all different in true Star Trek fashion. We talk a lot about when Strange New Worlds is on, like the leaning back into, episodic, different tones, different kinds of stories. Barge of the Dead and Tinker Tenor Doctor Spy could not be more different. They're back to back, and I think they're both awesome. So yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much I'm enjoying Voyager season 6. I think even I didn't give Riddles an A, but I think it's excellent. Great episode for Ethan Phillips and Tim Russ. Sort of a many seasons later kind of answer to Tuvix, putting those two characters together in a different way and exploring their connection and their unique kind of bond. I think Fairhaven I've come around on, to be honest. I've not been a fan of Fairhaven, like going back to like rewatch 1, 2, but I think with each passing time, I come around on it a little bit more. I think it's a really good episode for Janeway. I think it gets into her head in some really interesting ways.
Wow.
And yeah, it's about, I think it's aging well. I think it's about people's, I think with the emergence of like AI and the internet and people's ability to like manipulate connections, and I think it's more apt today than it was when it aired. And I think it's easy to, for me, the thing I think I struggle with is I don't like its sequel. I haven't gotten to it yet on this rewatch. I think Spirit Folk is awful, generally. When I've watched it, I've come away feeling that. And I think sometimes I lump them together, and that's the instinct I've tried over the last couple of rewatches to resist. I want to treat them as two unique episodes. Just because they take place on the same holodeck program does not mean they should go hand in hand necessarily. So this time I felt like I did that successfully, and I really came away enjoying Fairhaven. I think it explored Janeway's unique position on that ship as a captain of that ship in that set of circumstances, and the challenges that offers. I think that's been a theme that gets touched on here and there in episodes like Resolutions, which we both really like too. And certainly gets touched on ongoing, beyond that. But this really dives into that. And if she can't have a romantic connection or a meaningful, intimate friendship or any kind of connection that goes deeper than like, a platonic, strictly, thing, where does that come from? Like, does it come from a passing alien culture that you stop and have a fleeting thing with, or do you try to make it work with somebody on the crew? Probably not, either one of those things. So what's left? The holodeck is left, and on the holodeck she can create anything she wants. She meets this person in a holodeck program, is kind of into him, kind of interested, but has to make ends up making a lot of changes to what makes that person up. And I think it gets into some really interesting things about, differences are as important as, similarities with making this work, and the hazards of, needing it to be too perfect to open yourself up to that. So yeah, Fairhaven's been one of the surprises of this rewatch. At the end of the whole thing, I always try to like come up with, what changed, which episodes went up, which went down in like significant ways. Where did I feel like I made maybe a breakthrough with turning around or having a different opinion about an episode? I think Fairhaven's near the top of that list for me, at least on this one. So
yeah, that's surprising. I always go back to the just the the uber importance of the holodeck for a crew on a mission like that. So I always, um, a lot of people will knock um, maybe Voyager going back to the holodeck well a little bit too much, but I think it's hard to kind of justify that when they're on that type of
Yeah,
mission.
I'm glad they do it. I wish they almost did it
Yeah,
more. You know.
and I think there's some really good an arc with Knight, like Janeway is dealing with some stuff, and so I think it's really good to see. One thing I am curious about is I think um, we always want to compare like Voyager's strongest seasons, and so do we go back and forth 4, 5, and 6? Which one would you pick? I think 6 can make an argument, maybe similar to TOS 1 and 2 or some of these GNG seasons. I think it almost comes down to consistency and then just like how you feel about some of these episodes, and so I'm just really curious of
Yeah,
what do we think with Voyager? Does it go back to the consistency where there might be more A's in one season, but there's more lower end stuff like
yeah.
Spirit Folk and some of these other episodes that might bring it down a little bit.
Historically speaking, season 6 comes back down to earth a little bit in the second half. That's why I'm kind of glad we're touching on this. Like we're doing this like literally at the halfway point. I watched Memorial, which is 14, so like just over the 50% mark of the season. Uh, Historically, the back half of the season does come back to earth a little bit. There's Spirit Folk, there's Fury, the Kess episode that I'm really not too fond of generally. There's some others that are kind of just okay, at least historically speaking. So, yeah, but you're right. Like, season 6, depending on how you measure it, if I took like the grade point average system that I kind of use away and I was just looking for like, okay, which batch of episodes has the most heavy hitters? Like, where does the majority of like the top 15 episodes, if I was going to put together a top 10 or a top 15, where do they come from? I think season 6 is going to carry a pretty heavy load of them, right? So, with the ones I just mentioned. So, you could talk yourself into, if you feel the way I do about the season and you have the same opinions, which nobody does. Season 6 could be framed as like maybe the best season because of how so many of those episodes loom so large. But we'll see. I'm curious to see if I had a big change with Fairhaven, so I may have a big change with others as well, or moderate changes that move that average around a little bit and get it closer to 4 and 5 are really tough to match because of the consistency. I think for those two seasons, I think I don't think either one of them have as many mid to low tier episodes as 6 does, especially in the back end. Right now, I'd say season 6 has had 2. Like I said, I meant Memorial. I would say Alice, the Tom Paris haunted ship episode, is a miss for me. And I think Virtuoso, the Doctor Opera celebrity episode, is a miss for me. So I'm 2 of 14 are like I would go thumb pointed down on. The rest of them are up. I'm a little mixed on. I know one of the interesting ones that we've talked about a couple times on Trek Live, as we both hit it, is Dragon's Teeth. I always go into it wanting to love it because it's such a big concept, and there's the Vaadwaur are awesome in concept. They look cool, but if it's almost become like a cliche to point to that one and say, oh, it should be a 2-parter because it was supposed to be a 2-parter. Like that was how it was conceived. That was the intent, and for all the reasons it became a single episode. And I think it's become almost easy to kind of point to that and say, well, that's what's wrong with it. But I think that's what's wrong with it. I mean, I think it's just there's not enough time to make that concept come fully to life, and I think it relies a lot on some change in loyalties with some of the Vaadwaur characters. That like the main guy that they're kind of dealing with has some shifts that happen within the 45 minutes that I think, with more time to breathe and more room and
Yep.
some more nuance, I think it would become more of a credible, you know, arc for him, and that's an important cog in that
Yeah.
episode.
Because we don't have a lot of time to really care about his,
No,
loyalties. Yeah, so it's
and
tough.
they're changing. Like he wants Voyager's help, and then he's kind of swayed into kind of betraying Voyager, and then Janeway talks to him, and he shifts back, and he wants to help Janeway, and like that all happens kind of really suddenly, I think, and it's just kind of jam packed in there with so many balls in the air. Um, and I think they do some interesting things with Seven, kind of discovering regret and learning to to contend with having that emotion that I don't think the episode has enough time to explore. Um, so it's an interesting one. It's always a fun one to unpack and think about because there's so many opportunities there, and I like a lot of what it does, but I think there's a cap on it, or a ceiling on it that kind of keeps it in that mid tier for me. Um, so yeah, it's been interesting. I'm curious to kind of see how the season ends. I know how it ends, but to see how like the numbers stack up,
Yeah,
how it all
yeah,
comes
yeah.
together in terms of like the grade point average and how it compares to 4 and 5 especially. So um, got a lot of comments in here from Rob and Jeff talking about the various episodes we're touching on. Tinker Tenor getting some love. Equinox. Rob loves Dragon's Teeth and Unimatrix Zero, which I haven't hit yet. Good Shepherd as well. Um, um, Good Shepherd is Lower Decks before Lower Decks existed. Yeah, it's definitely
Yep.
in the TNG Lower Decks model. Um, so, um, yeah, a lot of interesting things to chew on with Voyager season 6, and check out my reviews on Twitter. Chime in if you disagree with some of them. Some of them have gotten a lot of traffic in terms of replies and sharing opinions. Pathfinder, blink of an eye. I think Dragon's Teeth generated some. So if you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear equally what people are thinking about those episodes. But what about you? Discovery season 1. I think the last time we talked, you had just done Context is for Kings. So I think you've seen a couple others, kind of getting
Yeah.
into the meat of season 1.
Yeah, I think just since I think it's only been one or two.
Butcher's Knife, maybe.
Yeah, The Butcher's Knife and Choose Your Pain more recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just been really slow go. Getting ready for the new little one, so it's been tough for me to watch some Star Trek. But no, Choose Your Pain really that one kind of stood out to me. Just new introductions, or I guess introductions, old characters, new characters. A lot of some really good nuggets in there, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's slow go, I guess, through Discovery. That's just filled with nostalgia, and also, I don't know. Anytime I sit down to watch an episode, it feels really special. I don't know if that's because I'm going really slow or what, but it really allows me to put some of these episodes under the microscope and see if I can tell. Especially with some of these introductions, with Tyler and stuff, and
Yeah.
is there any Easter eggs, little nuggets in there? And so it's been really fun in that respect because I touched on this a couple of weeks ago. It's like this is some of these episodes, like The Butchers. I think I've seen Choose Your Pain beforehand, but some of these episodes, touching for the first time since 2017. So it's definitely interesting to kind of go through some of these episodes and. Yeah, it's interesting just to see the such a big difference. So it's not just with some of the characters, especially with Burnham, but with
You have a visitor.
yeah, the little squish is coming in to say hi. Not just with some of the characters, but with some of the like just the ship isn't.
Oh boy. Poor
the
Mabel.
ship the ship isn't like with with the spore drive, like that isn't all ironed out yet, and so it's fun to kind of see the development of obviously the spore drive and stuff, and some of these characters like Burnham. This season is she's just so much more rigid in her, and that's just maybe just because of the actor or what, um, but it's just interesting to see her coming off like this deconstruction of so rigid and so logical in the first feels like the first half of the season, um, to kind of where I remember her now, and um, yeah, just little things like that I noticed in some of the episodes. It just um, feels like it was yesterday, but it also feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, for
If
sure.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Season 1 has so many elements that are, we've talked about this, and I think maybe the last time we talked about Discovery and rewatching it for you, you know, so much of season 1 kind of relies on surprises and things kind of coming out of left field a little bit. Things
Like
like
Harry Mudd, yeah,
Harry Mudd,
yeah.
but like obviously like trying to unpack, being able to rewatch it and trying to unpack like how soon can you pick up on little indicators that Lorca is who he is? How quickly can you kind of find breadcrumbs about Tyler and his identity? Um, it's one of the things that kind of interests me too. Is like how does Lorca know who Tyler is? Like when he meets him in the Klingon prison ship, like does he know? Do you think he puts one and one together that he's what he is? Or do you think he really believes he's a Starfleet officer who is taken prisoner and he's not some
I
kind of plant?
I don't know. I think he knows, but
I think he
it's
knows.
yeah. I just think that it's that Lorca character is so like it's easier for him to be able to like play with like the whose side is like because he's not on anyone's side. He's
Right.
from this different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's easier um, to kind of play that. And I think mirror universe characters, and maybe this is a discussion for another day, but I think they already um, are better tuned to seek out loyalties and stuff because like just it's so cutthroat. I think
Yes.
I think it's easier for him to kind of to be able to see all of that just because that's his world,
Mm.
and so that feels more familiar to him than some of this you know prime timeline stuff. So whatever timeline we're in. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Lorca sees it as an opportunity to have maybe an ace in the hole and have he's looking for. He talks a lot as the season goes on about trying to shape the Starfleet officers into warriors to kind of fit his mission, fit what he needs,
Yeah.
right? So, and the struggle of that, trying to turn these scientists and these Starfleet guys who are not used to this kind of life in wartime into people who can thrive in that, so that they can survive and do what they got to do, so he can get to where he needs to go. And I think he sees if Tyler is what he thinks he is, that can only help, and he needs tools more than anything, and that's a tool that he can use. So that's my read on it, at least. I think when he sits there and he says, Klingons don't usually take prisoners. That doesn't really make sense. Why are you here? I think he knows that there's something more to it, and that it's probably a plant
But
that he
again,
can use to his advantage.
it starts at the beginning of the season. Like it's
Mhm.
why did he bring Michael onto the ship?
Right.
Like this, like he's just surrounding himself with some of these tools, like you
Yes.
said. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of cool things to uh, consider. Like that first rewatch is really an interesting phenomenon with, especially the first season of Discovery, just because of how twisty turny it is and how reliant on mystery and those tea leaves kind of are. Uh, Butcher's Knife also leans really heavily. We talked a lot when you rewatched the pilot, the first two episodes, like the Klingon stuff, and how we both were really into that when it first aired. Um, the exploration of the Klingons, the use of the Klingon language, putting us in their perspective a little bit. Butcher's Knife does that too. There's a lot of Klingon stuff, and that leans really heavily into Mary Chieffo and as Laurel, and Shazad Latif as Voke at the time, Kenneth Mitchell as Kor, who just passed.
Right, R.I.P.
Yeah, for sure. Did you feel the same there with that episode? Like, did the Klingon stuff work for you there? I know that can be a dividing line for that episode in particular, and how it's used. There's a lot of Klingon language there. There's a lot of Klingon, subterfuge and politicking. Like, were you on board? Did it bother you? Where did you kind of feel?
Yeah, I'm on board with it. So it's not something that really, at this point, takes me out. I'm trying to remember at the time. I don't know if it really did, just because it was at a time that everything was under the microscope, and this was so new, and we were so into it. So,
Yeah.
I was never really against the using of the Klingon language. So it didn't bother me any, and I just think it adds a uniqueness to this season, and so I always look forward to it whenever it comes up. So yeah, I'm a big Klingon guy to begin with. So people say, Klingons have been overused. I tend to disagree. It's just I've always been a big proponent of Klingons, and would love to see more Klingon stuff. I love to see the house dynamics and just some of the other episodes, and just add wrinkles to that species. This is one of my favorites. So
yeah,
I love to see that.
I do too. I mean, I enjoy the deep dive into Klingon culture, and for as much time as we do spend with the Klingons through Worf and through episodes like Barge of the Dead, we get a lot of insight into Klingon culture and history and religion. Like, there's a lot there in the Berman era and back. But I think this is a different flavor, and just adds more color and believability to like a complicated culture. I remember it premiering in the early part of season 1, like loving that Laurel comes from a house of like spies and like a kind of a different brand of Klingon, style. Like I always been a fan of Judgment, the Enterprise episode, which shows like a Klingon lawyer who talks kind of about, it's a shame that
not
Klingon,
everybody's warriors.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's important to see that it's not so uniform. And I think the Discovery season 1 particularly does a really nice job of making it believable that in like the Trouble with Tribbles, there's a human plant on that space station who's there to be a spy, who's a Klingon in disguise, and that was a tactic that they were using in the 23rd century, and that it wasn't just warriors on birds of prey, fighting to the death
around.
and causing chaos. Like there was more. There was a different side of it as well. I mean, that's been there since 1967 with that episode. So I feel like what Discovery did with Laurel and that house and the kind of things that they were doing with Ash Tyler make that like, oh yeah, like this is something the Klingons were doing then. This was something that was in their bag of tricks, and I think that adds a lot of color and like I said, three-dimensionality to the whole thing. So yeah, good stuff. You got some really great ones to come. I think your next couple are Lethe and Magic to Make the Same Span Go Mad, which Rob was just talking about rewatching. That's
Excited for those. Yeah.
Pretty
complete opposite almost.
Yes, yeah. Again, that's one thing I'm always interested to hear people talk about and see if they agree with me, that Discovery, is a serialized show for sure, but these episodes have a little more self-identity and uniqueness than you think. And I think the more you watch it and the more you come across these, I think Choose Your Pain is very different than even Magic to Make the Same Man Go Mad, which both feature Rainn Wilson as Harry Mudd. I think they're very different kinds of episodes, and Lethe in between them is as different as either one on both sides. So, yeah, pay attention to that, and I'm definitely going to be interested to bat that around down the line a little bit once you're a little further in. Um, just to go right into, I think at this point we'll go into DS9, wrap up some of my stuff there. I'm going to transition to a different screen here where you're going to see my full series ranks, which you can also find on Twitter. So on your screen, you should be able to see that now. Hopefully, it's semi-readable if you're watching it on a computer, especially. It's top to bottom. Episode grades are all there. You can see top 10 is pretty standard compared to what I've done in the past. In the Pale Moonlight, Far Beyond the Stars, The Visitor, Duet, Trials and Tribulations, top 5. I think that's been pretty standard for me for a long time now. I think that always kind of comes out the same with very few surprises. Bottom 5, Meridian, The Muse, Let He Who Is Without Sin, Fascination, and Profit and Lace. I got 4 Fs. The Muse, Let He Who Is Without Sin, Fascination, and Profit and Lace, all Fs. I have 31 A's. Hard Time being the last one of those. I like having it this way because it kind of almost does it in like a 4-quarter kind of a deal, or fourths, kind of stacking these episodes, kind of a tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that's a dividing line that makes sense when I look at it as I can kind of feel like episodes I really loved, episodes I really liked, episodes I'm good with for the most part, and then maybe episodes that I'm a little more skewing negative on in the four columns there. If you can read it, anything stand out to you? I'm not sure. Like I said, I see it on my screen as a graphic, but is it legible on the computer screen?
I just went full screen, and
okay.
You can read it. Yeah.
Cool.
So, right. But yeah, it's just curious to see that. I like the 4 quadrants, like you said. It's definitely like A, B, C, and then kind of lower end of the spectrum. But yeah, definitely not a lot of surprises. Kind of at the bottom and the top, obviously. It's tough to even with some of those bottom episodes. I think there's still some interesting stuff to be explored there.
They've got Rob in the chat. One of the first things he said when it went on the screen was "Move Along Home" so low. I get that a lot. I mean, I feel like every time I get to Move Along Home in any rewatch and I review it, people are like complete hard disagree. Like it's definitely got its fans. Similar to Spock's Brain, I've said this before. I think those 2 episodes kind of go hand in hand a little bit with the camp value and like I think they scratch the same itch for a lot of people.
Yeah, only time will help those episodes.
Yes,
cult following.
The cult classic element.
It kind of spills into kind of the greater fandom for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this is a really interesting exercise always to do. I've talked about this before. This is not something that I do like at the end of the rewatch. I don't finish What You Leave Behind and then start tackling this and go one episode at a time, or try to jury rig this in any kind of way as a collective thing at the end. I stack one episode as I go. Like when I watched Emissary, I put it down. Then past prologues next, I stack that one and kind of go one at a time as I watch the show. That's the only way that I can really do it. Any time I would try to do something like this without using that method, I would not feel confident at all in like it reflecting my actual feeling. The episode grades help a lot for me to do this as well, because once I assign it the grade, that kind of tells me where it goes instead of trying to fit, just picking a random like Shadows and Symbols. I gave an A- in season 7. Instead of trying to figure out where that goes in relation to 150 other episodes, I'm just looking at the other A- really, and maybe using that as a tool to feel like, is that the pool of episodes that it feels comfortable in? Yes. Yeah. Okay, that kind of validates the A-. It tells me it shouldn't be a B+ or an A. And then I kind of go one at a time through those other A minuses and figure out, okay, where does it relate in there? Like, is it better than crossover? Yeah. Do I like it better than in the Hands of the Prophets? No, that's where I put it. So
Okay.
it's everybody has a different way to do it. If they do it,
Yeah.
if they try it, that's how it works for me. The more episodes, especially the 7 season Berman shows with the 170 episodes, it's especially difficult to do it any other way. I think if you try to do it with Picard or something with 25, 30, 35 episodes, somewhere in that range, I think that's one thing that maybe you can scrounge together in a variety of ways. But with this many in the pool, this is the way that's kind of ended up working well for me. Rob's top 5 he's sharing is Duet, In the Pale Moonlight, Inter Arma, Enim Silent Legis, Sacrifice of Angels, and Hard Time. Um, that's interesting. I have A's on all 5 of them, so it's a well variety. It's a variety that's different than mine for sure, but we agree on them being kind of top flight episodes of Deep Space Nine. And just knowing you, Rob, and talking to you about Deep Space Nine over the years, I think that really makes sense. That's a list that reflects you, at least the way I know you. So I love that. Yeah. Anything else kind of stand out? I know it's kind of hard to stare at a list like that and pull anything out that makes any sense or take anything away.
No, I just think it's interesting. I kind of missed the end of that.
No, it's
It's
all right.
just it's just hard because like I like that you compare them with some of the other A minuses because I think it can be, at least for me doing ranks, it can be really hard when an episode is around a really bad batch,
Mhm.
and then it feels better than it might actually be, and so that's kind of something that I might struggle. Um, but yeah, I guess the only thing that Sanctuary, I think we did a little underrated thing. I think the thing with Sanctuary is that I feel like Deep Space Nine maybe missed an opportunity of doing things like exploring species on the other side of the, um, as my house goes crazy, as just exploring more aliens kind of on the other side of the world. I think that's kind of where my maybe things that I maybe missed opportunity that we talked about with them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Actually, I think that's something that
Other episodes.
the early seasons of Deep Space Nine, I think, do better than the later seasons. I think the early, even with episodes, some of them are kind of low on here. Episodes like Move Along Home, episodes like Sanctuary, Rules of Acquisition. We meet alien species that feel weird and different from the Gamma Quadrant, that aren't necessarily, some end up being tied to the Dominion. But I think as the show progresses and it becomes focused on the Dominion and
Yeah,
all
the
that
Dominion.
stuff.
Yeah, that's what takes that slot.
Yeah.
It's like that's the Dominion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything you kind of meet from the Gamma Quadrant is going to be associated there somehow.
With the
Yeah, I think we lose some of that. The stuff that they were, I think, doing well. I think Captain Pursuit's maybe the best example of meeting an alien that feels alien and feels like intimidating. I think they really capture that wow factor when Tosk comes through the wormhole and they meet that culture that's hunting him, that feels like unknowable and intimidating and weird. And I think they capture that, like, strange new worlds, new life and new civilizations, kind of true blue
The
Star Trek stuff
one-offs.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I get why it's with the one-offs. I think there was some like equal. There was a lot of one-offs in TNG, and so I think that to swing back a little bit, they kind of went the Dominion route. So, which is fine. It's
Yeah.
and it. I mean, it's top tier Star Trek with Dominion stuff. So
Absolutely.
I'm not complaining about
Yeah,
that. But I'm
yeah.
just saying that kind of the reason why that one-off kind of went away is we had this really big sovereign kind of race or group that kind of took over.
Yeah. Rob just asked me, and I'm glad he did, because I this came up a couple days ago. Somebody responded to, I think it was the Alice review, because I gave it a D plus. Like, not necessarily like, oh, you shouldn't give it a bad grade, but like, how do you, like, oh, that's sad, that's a bad grade, and I had to say, like, Star Trek is Star Trek. Like, this is all kind of subjective, and even the episodes with lower grades, I like and I would choose over a lot of other things. Um, so I put up this thing a while back, and I responded with it, so you can find it on my Twitter. I mentioned earlier, to me, an A is like a classic. It hits those four quadrants I mentioned before, or at least squarely comes close with the majority of them. A B is good, solid, well executed Star Trek. Squarely hits a few of those four quadrants. A C is watchable, but not a personal favorite. Like, I'm happy to put it on. It's not something I struggle with, but maybe it just doesn't resonate with me as like a huge, personal favorite. It doesn't have that personal punch for me. A D would be weak overall, but may feature some admirable moments. It's Star Trek to me, so there's something in there that, whether it's a character moment or a scene or, a something that resonates somehow. Like, it's not a complete flop, but it maybe doesn't totally work. And then an F would be a real misfire with very, very few or no redeeming qualities. So I get asked that a lot. I always struggle, and to be honest with you, one of the things I really feel even more intimidated by as time goes on with these, putting a grade on episodes helps me a lot with doing this, what's on the screen right now. But especially with the new Trek, reviewing something like Prodigy or Discovery, Strange New Worlds, where these people who make these shows are online and are like in our communities and reading it. Yeah, and I hate that. I really do, because it's hard for me to like articulate in that format that I try to do, like in a single tweet, put a grade on it. That a C is still like, it's my favorite thing in the world. Like, I'm watching it. I'm going to watch it for the rest of my life. And it's like it's all graded on the curve. Like, it's not something I dislike. I'm not hammering it. I'm not saying it's bad. It's
That's
variance
the
on a
toughest
theme.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
like,
I feel like everybody wants an A, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's hard.
And I don't want to come across like I'm, because there are these people online who do crap on stuff and don't and speak freely about their disdain for some of these things, and I am not that guy. I love this stuff, all of them, but it's important for me to be able to separate the episodes a little bit so that I can do these kinds of things, to read it out like what I love the most, but I love it all. So that's kind of that. I'm also going to put up here just real quick as another thing to look at, little chart that kind of illustrates the way the seasons compare with the GPA system. Just kind of visualize the kind of growth and changes of the show from seasons 1 to 7. I think to be expected. It's kind of growth until you get to 4, 5, and then it kind of tops off there, and then maybe 6 and 7 for me drop a little bit. I think that we've talked about that. I think in the last couple of shows when I hit maybe the end of season 6, we mentioned that something I don't want to say I feel insecure about it, but I see DS9 season 6 often picked as like the best season of Star Trek, and I very much do not reflect that in my own, because again, like we were just talking about, I think with Voyager season 6 kind of works the same way with DS9 season 6. Like, if you're looking for the best of the best and where those episodes live, maybe that I can see why somebody would say that the beginning of season 6 of DS9 is as good or better than the beginning of season 6 of Voyager, with the Dominion arc and the Sacrifice of Angels stuff culminating and all that, the occupation of the station. Like, that storyline and those episodes are really strong, and that can really buoy it. And then you have, beyond that, you have Far Beyond the Stars, you have In the Pale Moonlight, you have real classics there. So that's one way to do it, and I respect people whose instinct is that. But the way I do it with the episode grades and looking at each one, kind of weighing them equally against each other and doing this, season 6 falls a little bit because it's also got Prophet and Lace, it's got Valiant, which I'm not a fan of, it's got Time's Orphan, it's got Wrong's Darker Than Death and Night. Like, there's mid to lower tier episodes in there that I'm not. Resurrection's another one. Like, there's episodes that are a little bit of a slog in there too that bring it back down to earth a little bit. So Yeah, I absolutely feel that accurately represents my feeling on the show. The way that the show kind of grows and changes over the 7 years. Uh, Moving on to another little readout. This is the batches of episodes that either changed a lot or didn't change at all. The group on the left are episodes that moved up in those ranks from the third rewatch I did about a couple years ago. Double digit slots. So episodes that moved up considerable amount from rewatch to rewatch. The group in the middle are episodes that moved down considerably uh, from the last rewatch, and the one on the right are episodes that literally didn't move at all. The episodes on the top of that list, or at the very bottom, I think are kind of maybe a little more understandable. The best, the worst, kind of tend to stick where they are a lot of the time. But episodes like, I don't know, Extreme Measures, which kind of somewhere in the middle. An episode like Magnificent Ferengi, which I think is really, really great, but maybe not in my top 10. I just think they're weird kind of anomalies that literally didn't move at all from one to the other, which to me is kind of weird considering there's 176
Yeah.
spots that they could fall in, and they're in the exact same. Um, so the assignment moved up 21 spots, Empok Nor 20, Paradise 20. That they're pretty big shifts upward. Broken Link went down 34. The Begotten went down 31. Heart of Stone went down 30.
Is that just because the ending of that just doesn't that doesn't feel as fresh or what?
Heart of Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never am
Or
completely
I
in.
guess maybe should reframe.
Mhm.
What is the biggest? What makes the biggest swing in some of these episodes? I know it's kind of it depends on specifics maybe in some of these episodes, but the assignment. I mean, that's a big jump.
That's a big jump. Yeah,
Heart of Stone
30
and
spots.
Hippocratic Oath at some.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's 24 is also that's a big swing too. And,
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, a lot of it's driven. Most of them are driven by changes in the grade. Really, like if it goes from a C plus to a B, just because of the nature of the way I do it, that's going to represent a pretty sizable change. Like I'm sure when I do this at the end of Voyager, Fairhaven's probably going to be the biggest riser. I'm guessing. I don't know for sure. There are other episodes that I change grades on for sure, but I think that might have gone from a C to a B. So that's going to look like the assignment, or maybe even
big
more.
swing.
Yeah, the assignment. I don't remember where it was. I gave it a B this time around. I've always been a little mixed on that in the past, but I really felt. I'm not married, but I think maybe because I have many friends who are, being able to see that story through the eyes of somebody who is, like in my friends and more people around me, like the horror element of having your spouse kind of turn on you and having that be your
okay, with O'Brien and
okay. I think that resonates more with me now that I'm older. I think Kalmini's performance, seeing Keiko in that degree of distress, like there are moments in it that I think are more scary now than they were when I was younger. So I think that's probably and even Empok Nor, I think same kind of thing. I think the horror vibes are growing on me, being more comfortable and more in tune with just getting down with that. For Heart of Stone, I always kind of come away feeling the same thing. I love the Nog storyline. I think that sings all the way through it. The twist of the Odo, I think that's important for Odo to come to terms with. But as an isolated incident in that one episode, I think the rug getting pulled out from under to that degree feels a little tricky. A little bit. I feel like it's a little bit like a cheat, and doesn't move the ball forward in enough of a meaningful way. Even though it kind of does when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it kind of does set into motion the Odo Kira slow walk that's going to happen for the next several years. It at least forces Odo to acknowledge to himself that that's how he feels. I give it a good grade. I think I give it a B. It might have come down from a B plus, which is where that drop off comes from. the last time might have been a B plus. So yeah, a lot of it, because of the way I described it earlier, it really is kind of driven by the letter grade. If it changes a letter grade or changes by more than a single, like not just a B to a B plus, like if it goes from a B to an A minus or something like that, they're the ones that are the big jumpers in either way.
Okay.
Rob saying hard time in the assignment weren't on his radar as a teenager, but now that he's older with a family, these hit much harder now and are really powerful episodes. Totally agrees. Our lives definitely have an effect on how we interpret the episodes. That's why I keep doing it. That's why I keep wanting to rewatch, because as I age, I definitely find that certain things, just like with I talked a lot about Fairhaven earlier. I think that's that too. I just think aging and being a more mature adult, like the things that Janeway's dealing with, make more sense to me than I did when I was watching that at 12 or 13 when it first aired. You know, it didn't hit me the same way, and now it does, and it's taken decades, but I've really kind of turned around on it, and that's happened in both directions for me. Yeah, definitely appreciate Rob and Jeff in the chat being really active and showing love and appreciation for this kind of stuff. Talking about liking the changes and how they're shown. I love it too. That's why I do it, and I'm glad that somebody out there, if one person out there enjoys it, it's worth doing, as far as I'm concerned. And I appreciate the good feedback. Thanks for taking some time to watch and listen. Trying to think anything else. Deep Space Nine. I think we've covered it. We've talked a lot about Deep Space Nine on the show over the years. So I don't want to hit too many repeated points. You finished Deep Space Nine a few years ago now, but we spent a lot of time through your rewatch last time around, and I've touched on it a lot this time as well. So, but I always enjoy putting that stuff out there just to see what catches people's eye and what kinds of conversations it can start. The episodes moving up, moving down, the way the ranks kind of reflect. So I like being able to do that as we finish shows. So before we wrap up and get out of here, so you can take care of your what you got going on there. What any big takeaways? Anything that kind of left an impression on you with the Disco Season 5 trailer that came out this week? What did you?
I love that they highlighted a lot of the pairings in it. Like I know that they have to put in some mysteries of the season, but I love seeing some of these pairings together, and that makes me excited that we're going to get some good payoffs with some of these characters, because I really do think that they deserve their time in the sun. The puzzle thing, that intrigues me a whole heck of a lot. I'm excited for that, but I loved seeing some of these characters just together on their own. No, I mean, there's some action sequences also, but It's just like having them just put the camera on the tripod and let the dialogue come off the page, because I think that that's what some of these characters need, and so I'm really excited for it. As sad as it is, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I took away a lot of the same things. It really, I felt like that last season. I think one of the things that I think will stand the test of time for Discovery and will be like a calling card for that show is how well they built the dynamic between Burnham and Saru. There were moments in season 4 when the two of them are together that I think really work well. There's a scene in Anomaly, which is the second episode of season 4, when they're on the bridge and they're in a crisis and they're trying to figure out what to do. And Burnham, very much like Kirk would look at Spock, like turns to her left and sees Saru at his station, and they like make eye contact and they're like, "Yeah, we know what we have to do."
I just got chills.
That is the good stuff.
That whole scene. I just got chills.
They know, like they're on that wavelength, and I love that they built that. And seeing the two of them together is like, to me, like the best of Discovery. I think the two of them, when they have like really juicy scenes, are the heart of the show, and I'm excited to see them again together. And Yeah, there's a lot to take from that. I mean, it looks like it's going to be fun, adventurous. I think it's going to be very different than season 4, which is a slower burn and has a very people knocked it for maybe feeling like it took too long and it was too slow and too many episodes that didn't move the ball forward enough. This being 10 and having a little bit of a different vibe, I think will make it feel as different as many of these seasons are. I think you nailed it years ago when you said, we have to look at these seasons like they're kind of the episodes. Like when you look at Discovery's 5 seasons, each season is like its own big episode, and I think that's very, very true. There's variations in the episodes within those seasons, but the stories and the tones of the seasons are what really, and the emphases of them are what really shift. So I'm curious to see how this one feels different than the 4 that came before. And it just, whenever I see, like in a trailer or a clip, it just, especially since it's been so freaking long since season 4, it's going to be like 2 years removed, more than 2 years removed since the finale of season 4, when season 5 premieres. Like how much I love the characters. Like I love Dr. Culber when I see him on a planet with Burnham and Book. Like hell yeah. Like that's cool. Like it looks like everybody's involved and has things to do, and I'm here for it all. So Jeff saying, as he's long said, and I've heard him say it, he feels Discovery's greatest strength has been its portrayal of emotion, and for some people that's not their cup of tea. That's fine, but it's what stands out to him, and it's valuable. I think I remember you saying, Jeff, at one point that
Great point.
What's more humanist than like our emotions and how we relate to people and connect and all like that. If Star Trek is about us and it's supposed to be like the human condition, Discovery's kind of mining that terrain as deeply as any of the shows have, and I hope that'll end up being one of its. I think diversity and the well-varied cast and bringing different groups into the fold will be a big calling card of Discovery, obviously. But I think that also will be something that people point to as like that's what Discovery did and brought to the table. So, anything else? Last thoughts before we get on out of here?
I don't think so. I think that about covers it. It's really good to be back talking about Star Trek. I'm excited to get back into Discovery again and keep chugging through season 1 and into the future. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think just real quick before we head out, show's going to be a little different for the next little bit. We're going to take a little bit of a hiatus. Dan's got some big life developments on the way, and I think once we come back in a little bit, there may be some pre-recorded episodes that premiere at this time slot. It won't be actual lives, just to accommodate some chaotic schedules in the early return. Hopefully, we'll get back to a live format down the line a bit. But we're gonna think on our feet and figure out a way to make it all work for both of us. And we will be back in the semi near future. But again, it'll look maybe a little different and be delivered a little differently for a little bit. But appreciate everybody hanging with us since we've been back after a little holiday break. We're going to take a little break again, and we will be back shortly.
Yes, another little one on the way. So, so the show will look a little bit differently. We're just going to go to pre-recorded for the time being. But,
Exciting times.
Yep, exciting times. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. If you want to keep the discussion going, Discord server is the best way to do it. Also, Twitter, not X, or any other of those social medias. Keep the discussion going. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thank Rob and Jeff helping carry the show. We will see you guys in the future.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.